Cyberpunk 2077 just released a massive update, and if you've been wanting to give the game a try, this might be the time to do it. Along with this update is a free 5-hour demo you can play to see if you want to dive back in. Let's take a quick look at the 5 major changes this massive patch 1.5 has brought. Let's start with the performance updates. Cyberpunk 2077 has next-gen exclusive features that add ray tracing to local light shadows. But more importantly, it implements 2 graphics modes on the PS5 and Xbox Series X. Performance mode, which runs gameplay at 60 FPS with dynamic 4K scaling, and ray tracing mode, which provides photorealistic shadow and reflection rendering, as well as gameplay at 30 FPS with dynamic 4K scaling. One caveat to this is that the Xbox Series S version won't have any graphics mode selection, and the default will be 30 FPS at 1440p with dynamic resolution scaling. There have been a few improvements to decrease the amount of FPS drops and visual quality, and now the PS5 controller will use haptic feedback based on in-game activity, and the controller's built-in speaker can be used for holo calls, text messages, and everything that happens in V's head. Along with multiple performance fixes, Cyberpunk 2077 has some new DLC features. You can now rent apartments with a one-time fee when you come across them in Night City or through the Easy Estates website on V's computer. These become available after completing the Playing for Time quest. You can rent out all apartments at the same time, and all apartments will share the same stash. Additionally, you can now customize V's starting apartment in Mega Building H10 using the Easy Estates website for $10,000. Some activities in the apartments also now grant temporary buffs. Taking a shower applies the refreshed status for an hour, which allows you to regenerate health during combat and increases the regeneration rate by 20%, and increases your health regen threshold by 20%. When you go to sleep, this regenerates your health and applies the rested status for an hour, which grants you plus 20% skill XP. Brewing coffee applies the energized status for an hour, which also gives you an additional 25% max stamina and a 30% additional stamina regen. One part I'm really excited about is that you can now customize your appearance when using the mirror in any of your apartments or safe houses, and it's free, and you can do it as often as you like. There are now more makeup and hair color options as well. There are 2 new weapons and other weapon attachments now available in Wilson's Second Amendment store in Mega Building H10 and, of course, throughout Night City, that include a new power assault rifle and a power submachine gun. Speaking of weapons, there have been detailed patch notes in this 1.5 patch update that include tweaks to combat AI. There have been some fixes to NPC melee and ranged combat and AI reactions, including taking cover, positioning, reloading, and more. Enemies are now better at blocking and evading attacks, and the heavier the weapon, the easier it is to hit. Your follower AI will now contribute more in combat, but can be defeated and temporarily disabled if they receive enough punishment. There's a new burnout mode where you hold gas and brake to engage and steer to rotate. This marks an improvement in the drive model, and you can now brake with more consistent performance, and a clutch animation has been added to remove unwanted wheel spin events. Motorcycles have been improved as well with the new drive model, and they're stable, and more steering improvements have been made to these vehicles specifically.
These cogs don't stand a chance! Fucking pigs!
In terms of gameplay and balancing, you now get more rewards from jobs, and clothing mods have been rebalanced and improved, but you do have to reinstall mods you had in your clothing after this update. There are 2 new stats replacing evasion. Mitigation chance determines how often the player has a chance to reduce incoming damage, and mitigation strength determines the percentage by which damage is reduced, 50% by default. You can now also sell unused cyberware at a Ripper Dock, and you can interrupt the self-revealing hack by damaging the Netrunner, or having immunity from self-ice cyberware. Activating Berserk will now double stamina instead of granting an infinite amount. There was a rebalance of various perks, and some were moved around in the skill tree, so all of the perk points that you spent need to be reset. There are also some new perks that are replacing older ones that you can experiment with. In terms of storyline, there have been a few secrets added in Night City that you can discover, more romance interactions and messages, and more interactions in the homes of love interests, like sleeping in a bed with your partner.
Take you for a ride.
With this update, lots of quality of life improvements were made to the UI and general gameplay of Cyberpunk 2077. There have been improved graphics to water interactions, rain visual effects, and weather systems so it changes more. There's a benchmark mode for PC and enabled variable rate shading, VRS, which boosts rendering performance and visual quality by varying the shading rate for different regions of the frame. With this new update, you can transfer saves from PS4 to PS5, so if you haven't played after trying Cyberpunk 2077 out on a past generation console and want to get back to it now, this might be the time to do it. There were a lot more detailed changes that were included in the patch notes, so if you want to read them fully, check out our article on IGN.com. And of course, for all news regarding Cyberpunk 2077 and its updates, keep it here at IGN.